the honor of introducing a dear friend and a public servant, Bruce Wilson. Most of you know Bruce by now. He's spoken to Rotary before, and he carries a powerful message. Just a little bit about Bruce. He and his wife, KK, have been married for 36 years. They met in 7th grade. They didn't marry immediately, but wasn't long. Rural Louisiana. They have 2 daughters and a son, a soon-to-be engineer's son, soon-to-be employed engineer's son, which I know he is grateful for. Bruce got his undergraduate degree at Louisiana Tech. It was a Northwestern grad that we always have to keep saying we use small words for him. I can see. But he has his doctorate in ministry, but his master's degree was in Hebrew and Old Testament studies, and I believe that will provide the foundation for your remarks.
That's right.
Okay, good. He's been a Rotarian since 1993. It takes a man who is sure of his convictions to speak on the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, because the comparisons, of course, are bound to come. While the world will little note nor long remember his remarks today. I can assure you that his message will be as inspiring to you as his daily work that he does with his incredible staff at the United Way of Northwest Louisiana is to me. Folks, he's doing amazing work to improve the quality of life for the common good. And for that, they deserve our applause. Please help me in welcoming my friend Bruce Wilson.
Jim, I appreciate you introducing me. I know Judy had to call about 30 different people. Somebody that would introduce me. For those of y'all who declined, I do know who you are. By way of the Hebrew reference, let me tell you how to speak Hebrew. Kind of just do this. It just has that in it, and I'm right. You know, it's just in there, and you know, you can work. I remember in my final year, I was taking a class called Rapid Hebrew Reading, and I got to the end, and I had to go for the professor in his office, and he said, "Okay, Bruce, turn to Isaiah," and he gave a chapter, and so I started reading. However, I had taken it kind of as a self-study course and hadn't shown up to class all semester and just trying to keep up. And so I'm sitting there trying to translate, and he looked at me with this smile on his face. Said, "Bruce, you know now if you weren't graduating, you wouldn't pass this course." And I said, "Yes, sir." And took my degree and went on down the road. But anyway, it's great to be here. One of the things I want to do today is just to recognize all the people who work in nonprofit organizations that are part of our great city. Would you just stand for just a second? If you're part of a nonprofit organization, agency, would you stand? Would y'all give them a round of applause? So today, this is not really a talk about United Way. I felt this was more a talk on the area of philanthropy and what that entails and what it means. I don't know if you ever thought about it, but sometimes the difference between success and failure is very small. It can hinge on a tiny kind of thing. When I was in school, back when they taught cursive writing and other kind of subjects, joke. But they're not teaching cursive writing in school as part of the Common Core curriculum. Okay. I learned a poem. And here was this poem. It said, "For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail." Small things. Ladies and gentlemen, today, small things matter. We are engaged in terms of our human society. We are engaged in a great battle. And there are great foes that we face. Foes like education, like income, like health. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the adult illiteracy rate throughout the state of Louisiana is approximately 36% of the population. Next time you're in a grocery store, look for people who are looking at the aisles, wandering the aisles, and staring at cans. The odds are they probably cannot read the contents on the label of the can, and they're trying to determine if there's sugar in there because they're diabetic and they know they're supposed to avoid that. We have a 50% dropout rate in Caddo Parish from the time children enter schools to the time they get to the 12th grade. Oh, and by the way, if you're a minority student, your odds of graduation are only about 30%. 70% drop out from the time they enter to the time they exit. We cannot sustain a livable society. We cannot be a society that people want to come and be part of if we do not overcome the areas, the challenges we face in education. So we are engaged in this great fight, and as my introducer said, today, 150 years ago, it was a Thursday in a small town in Pennsylvania named Gettysburg. Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, rose to give a speech. Now, what you may not know is that Abraham Lincoln was not the primary speaker at that event. The primary speaker was another man who delivered a Victorian oratory that lasted 2 hours. President Lincoln got up and he grabbed his lapels and he began a 300-word speech that redefined, at that point in history, what this nation was to be. He said the following words, and this is not the whole speech. He says, "We here resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth." And with that, he was saying that we as a democracy would endure. We would be a strong nation. Well, for a democracy to endure, for a democracy to flourish, it must have the engagement of people. And that is absolutely true in the area of philanthropy. Philanthropy is not the prerogative of government. It is the privilege of the governed. You and I are what make up our society. You and I are the ones that rise to meet the needs where we find ourselves. I mean, yes, my heart is broken at the Philippines and the disaster that is there. But we need to learn to think, what are the disasters right around us as well? And to be engaged in those types of issues. Now, folks, you saw a lot of nonprofit people stand up. I am not here today saying you should be involved with United Way, but you should be involved in philanthropy. You should be involved in meeting the needs of the folks. Now, I come from an ecclesiastical background. You may not know this, some of you, but I still serve as in interim pastor work. And so I understand that I have a responsibility to support the church where I am part of and where my family is. But I also am a citizen of a community, and therefore I have responsibilities to be involved in the life of the community and to be involved specifically with my time, with my talent, but also with my treasure. Now, we live in a society in which I would say, now, none of you would fall into this category, but the motto of the day is, get all you can all you get, and sit on your can. How many of you are living just counting the days till you can retire? See, we're at a time that's not good enough. We need people to be engaged into making a change. What percentage of the population even bothered to go to the polls this past Saturday? We have to be a community. We have to be citizens that roll up our sleeve and get to work. Now, I come from a long line of Republicans. My mother was an East Texan and despised Lyndon Baines Johnson. But I have never forgotten what John Kennedy said. And you know what I'm about to say. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You see, folks, if each of us in here decided to engage in the area of education, or engage in the area of income development, or engage in the area of a better health, wherever we find it, we would soon find the problems actually being solved. Now, that's something else I want to say today. To you, I would say, yes, be involved in philanthropy, but be involved in something that works. We have poured millions of dollars into nonprofit work, and we've got the same problems, by and large, today that we had 30, 40, 50 years ago. We need to learn to be very specific in how we invest our resources. So I would say, yes, find a nonprofit agency and get involved with it and walk arm in arm. But I would also say, find one that has measurable results and they have a proven way to get things done, and then jump in with them wholeheartedly in that. Don't just give to somebody because they stand out in the middle of the street with their hat out. I don't know about you, but in downtown Shreveport, we know that we get accosted a lot by people who are looking for a handout. And typically, I don't give to those people. But I'll tell you what I do give to. It's like I came out of Starbucks on Line Avenue one day, and there was a fella out in the mezzanine, and he had a violin, and he was playing. I went up and gave to him, because that guy was doing something to try to earn a living, and I appreciated that. So here we are. We are citizens. We are Shreveport. We are Northwest Louisiana. And we must get involved. We must make a difference. The Battle of Gettysburg, there were 48,000 casualties. Among that, I think the count was a little over 20,000 that were actually killed in that great battle. And it was the most tragic battle the nation had ever fought. But we too are fighting that great battle. We too are seeing casualties at every hand, at every turn of the corner. We must engage. I want to end with a story. Those of y'all who know me know I love stories. Especially love stories because it's a lot more interesting than what the speaker sometimes says. In 1919, a man recovering from injuries suffered in the Great War in Europe rented a small apartment in Chicago. He chose a location for his proximity to the home of Sherwood Anderson, the famous author. Anderson had penned the widely praised novel Winesburg, Ohio, and was known for his willingness to help younger writers. The two men became fast friends and spent nearly every day together for 2 years. They shared meals, took long walks, and discussed the craft of writing late into the night. The younger man often brought samples of his work to Anderson, and the veteran author responded by giving brutally honest critiques. Yet the young writer was never deterred. Each time he would listen, take careful notes, and then return to his typewriter to improve his material. He didn't try to defend himself for us. He put it later, I didn't know how to write until I met Sherwood Anderson. One of the most helpful things Anderson did for this young protege was to introduce him to his network of associates in the publishing world. Soon the younger man was writing on his own. In 1926, he published his first novel, which met with critical acclaim. Its title was The Sun Also Rises, and the author's name is Ernest Hemingway. But wait, the story doesn't end here. After Hemingway left Chicago, Anderson moved to New Orleans, and there he met another young wordsmith, a poet with an insatiable drive to improve his skills. Anderson put him through the same paces he had put Hemingway, writing, critiquing, discussing, encouraging, and always more writing. He gave the young man copies of his novels and encouraged him to read them carefully, noting the words, themes, and development of character and story. A year later, Anderson helped this man publish his first novel, Soldier Pay. 3 years later, this bright new talent, William Faulkner, produced The Sound and the Fury, and it quickly became an American masterpiece. Anderson's role, though, as a mentor to aspiring authors didn't stop there. In California, he spent several years working with the playwright Thomas Wolfe and a young man named John Steinbeck, among others. All told, 3 of Anderson's proteges earned Nobel Prizes and 4 Pulitzer Prizes for literature. The famous literary critic Malcolm Cowley said that Anderson was, quote, the only writer of his generation to leave his mark on the style and vision of the next generation. So I want to challenge you and I. Look behind you. Who are you investing in of the next generation to meet the needs that our society has and will continue to have? The definition of a leader is that you have somebody following. Who is following you? So, Bruce, I don't have anybody following me. And get involved in an area of philanthropy, in one of these nonprofits, and become somebody who is making changes that will carry over into the next generation. For if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Thank you very much.
Bruce would like to, our time here to answer any questions. You may have some about the United Way that you want to address with.
Okay.
Bruce, in the distant past, I had the good fortune to work with the United Way of Washington. It's been a lot of years since then, but for several years I was engaged with them. At that time, United Way as a whole had a wonderful record of the money that it brought in using a very small amount to run the office of the United Way, both locally and nationally. Is that still the same story that we see after all these years?
Well, it's still what we strive to do. We entered the recession in early 2009 to United Way with a pretty good account balance. We have a pretty good reserve fund built up. Over the past years since then, we have drawn that down to continue to allocate or give monies at the same level. However, if you look at my revenue line over the last 5 years, it is going downhill slightly, and that, by the way, is not individual giving; it's corporate giving has gone down, and so therefore we've taken a hit there. And my internal expenses stayed the same. But at some point, even if my internal expenses stayed like this and my revenue line did this, I had a guy, UPS supervisor down in Natchitoches a couple months ago. I was telling him about that. He circled it and said, yeah, we call that the jaws of death. And I said, that's right, we're there. So what have we done to overcome that? This is kind of a long answer, and I'm not trying to be political and not answer your question. The question is we try to keep it as low as possible. The ways we've done that is we've trimmed our staff from what we had. We had about 10 full-time equivalents going in this past year. We now have 7. One of the ways we've done that, and this was not only to meet internal business controls expenses, but also to more carefully invest the money. You may have missed it, but we in the Community Foundation, we've aligned our funding with the Community Foundation and have joined into an agreement with the Community Foundation that the United Way will have a fund within the Community Foundation that will continue to fund the same kinds of things, but it helps the nonprofits in that they only have to apply in one place. It makes sure we're not duplicating services across a broad range, and we're doing that. The other thing we're doing is we're just trying to trim other kinds of costs to make sure that we continue to have 99 cents of every dollar stay in the community. Now, I don't mean by that I've only got a 1% internal business cost. That we do like my staff enjoy getting a paycheck, they enjoy having health insurance, those kinds of things. But we do work hard to keep that as low as possible. So you ask the question, what was it in the past year? Our internal costs last year are somewhere around 25%, and that's frankly a little high. I was speaking to a Lions Club about a year and a half ago, and I had an old fellow ask me the question about internal costs, and I looked at him and I said, "Sir, let me ask you a question. Do you own a business?" He said, "Yes, I do." I said, "How much does it cost you to maintain your business? In other words, of the monies that come in the front door, what percentage do you plow back into your business?" Well, it's a lot higher than 25%. And so we fight with that, but we do struggle to make sure we invest that money as carefully as we can. The Better Business Bureau says that if you can keep it below 33%, 35%, you're doing pretty good. And so we are working in that area. I want to caution you, KD, a lot of nonprofits are very slick about the way they can hide actual internal business costs. And there are different methods of doing that. So I would just say to you, and not only Nunavut, but in any group, go and see what they do. See how they're spending money and what ways they are doing it. And you make your own determination if they're giving you the best value for your money. So much fun.
Any others?
Thank you all very much.